vascular organ, and so that would be expected to also contribute to the bleeding in addition to the lung injuries.
And could you show us just generally on your body the general direction or pathway of that gunshot wound?
So this wound entered in the back relatively high here, and it's going to go across and end up in the abdomen somewhere around here.
And in your opinion, that a gunshot wound caused his death?
Yes.
And were there other wounds that he suffered?
There was an additional wound.
You describe that for us.
That was a entrance wound of the chest. However, only a projectile fragment was recovered, and that wound path was very superficial.
So it would not have led to death?
That wound was much less significant, and yes, I could envision that wound not leading to death.
Any other findings of significance to share with this jury?
There were some other apparent ballistic injuries or fragmentary impacts on other parts of the body.
And could you explain those for us?
Anytime a projectile fragments, which at least one of these fragments did, or anytime there are other projectiles that have been fired in the vicinity that have fragmented, those can bounce or ricochet off of nearby structures, or they can perforate nearby structures and cause blunt impacts to the body that would cause these sorts of ballistic fragmentary injuries.
And so whether the bullet passed through another object or ricocheted off of it, you can't say?
Not given these findings. I couldn't be more specific.
And also, as far as distance determination, are you able to determine how far a weapon was from a body when the body received that gunshot wound?
In some cases, yes.
And in this case, was it very limited, the time that you found somebody with a very close-up gunshot wound?
In this specific case, I could not definitively say that there was evidence of close-range firing. However, the reason that those other ballistic or fragmentary impacts can be important is because those can, on some level, mimic close-range firing, and so that will complicate the evaluation. So in this case, I do at least have those fragmentary injuries, but I don't have anything that I could definitively say was close-range.
And could you tell us how you determine distance and what the different levels of distance are when pathologists are looking at gunshot wounds?
Your Honor, I'm sorry, if I could make a recommendation just to reduce the secondary trauma that can be suffered. If we don't have to have the picture up while we're talking about distance and things like that. If we can have the picture, take it down, and then picture for the next one, I think it would be appreciated.
It's their case. However you want to proceed, Mr. Turner, go ahead.
Our problem is the PowerPoint just moves to the next child.
I guess we can click the button and it goes on.
You can click it off. That's fine. That's fine.
Go ahead, proceed.
And we were talking about distance determinations. Can you tell how far a weapon was from the body when the body received the wound?
Correct. So in some cases that is possible. When a gun is fired, the bullet obviously is going to exit the muzzle of the gun. However, more than just the bullet will also exit the weapon. There can be particles of burning and unburnt gunpowder, as well as residues of combustion. If the gun is fired in close enough proximity to the skin, those additional items can sometimes impact or deposit upon the skin. And so those findings that we would most typically look for would be soot, which is an amorphous grayish black residue that is the products of combustion, that's the smoke coming out of the gun, or powder tattooing, which are relatively regular punctate abrasions that are caused by the burning and unburnt particles of gunpowder striking the skin and abrading it and embedding into the skin. Beyond that range, it is possible for gunpowder to deposit on the skin, although because it lacks mass, it can no longer abrade the skin. In addition, under those ranges, if the muzzle of the gun is actually directly in contact with the skin, we can see contusions, abrasions, or lacerations associated with the muzzle of the gun on the skin.
And is there a name for if the muzzle is on the skin?
That would be a contact wound.
And what are the other classifications?
The other classifications would be near contact, depending on how much you want the lumper split. Something that's relatively near contact would probably be expected to have soot. That is, and this is a very fuzzy number, somewhere in the vicinity of the first 12 inches away from the muzzle. Now again, many variables are going to affect the actual distance, so the only real way to get a harder number than what I'm providing is to test fire the actual weapon against a witness panel with the actual ammunition used. But again, as a rough guide, about a foot. For powder tattooing, somewhere in the range of 3 to 4 to 5 feet is where powder tattooing will cease. For gunpowder particulate deposition, a very broad range, anywhere from 9 to 21 feet, gunpowder particles can begin to cease being deposited on the skin. As we move beyond that, we will have no evidence of close range firing. Some people would call that distant, although it's also reasonable to call that indeterminate, because again, depending on many of these variables, there may be different reasons why you're not seeing evidence of close range firing.
Thank you very much. And so we had talked about the wound that caused death. We've also talked about a chest wound, and you were talking about this third kind of abrasive wound. Is that correct?
So in this case, there were the fragmentary injuries.
Fragment wounds. Next, turn to State's Exhibit 740. If you could display that. Mr. Rogelio Torres. And is that your autopsy number 1380?
Correct.
And is there a wound depicted in State's Exhibit 740?
A wound is seen.
And what's the nature of that wound?
That is a wound that is adjacent to the right eyebrow.
Well, that was not a life-threatening wound?
In this case, that was described as a graze wound.
A graze?
Graze, correct.
Thank you. You can turn it up. Could you tell us then what your findings were as to Mr. Torres?
In this case, 12 gunshot wounds were noted. The injuries that were produced included the brain, the right lung, liver, right kidney, thoracic spine and spinal cord, as well as the right humerus, which is to say the long bone of the upper arm.
And each one of those wounds, those 12 wounds, were capable of causing death?
They're all potentially going to contribute. Of course, a wound that is traversing the brain is going to very likely be causative of death in the absence of the rest. However, if you take out, for instance, the wound traversing the brain, a combination of liver, kidney, thoracic spine, long bone fracture, and lung injury might well also be productive of death. But again, these were all collectively present, and so they were all considered as collectively causing death.
And any other non-life-threatening wounds?
Again, some of the other findings, such as the graze wound, would have been present. So there was the graze wound on the right eyebrow. There were some additional, less physiologically significant wounds that didn't cause major neurovascular or organ injuries that were present.
Thank you. Exhibit 741, Miranda Mathis.
Yes.
Could you tell us what your findings are in regard to Miranda Mathis?
In this case, there were 12 gunshot wounds. The significant injuries included the heart, both lungs, the liver. There were injuries to the cervical spine and spinal cord, that is, again, in the neck, skull base fractures, and there were injuries to the larynx and trachea, that is to say, the windpipe, basically, as well as the pelvis.
And any non-life-threatening wounds?
There were some additional injuries that, again, the ones that I described are the ones that are sort of the most physiologically significant. There were some additional.
Let's just stay with those, and
Okay.
you find a wound that you consider significant as to whether or not it was a contact or close contact, something that would make it different from the other wounds you're describing.
So in this case, there were 3 of the gunshot wounds that in this case did demonstrate the gunpowder tattooing that were mentioned. And there was some additional gunpowder tattooing on the right hand.
And does that suggest range?
So this would be indicative of close range firing.
And that would be,
That would be the powder tattooing, so as we described it, the intermediate range.
and the distance would be about what?
As I said, somewhere in the vicinity of that 3 to 4 to 5 feet is when that begins to cease, so I would expect under that. But in order to get a better number, it would be necessary to test fire the weapon with the ammunition used.
Somewhere around 3, 4, or 5 feet away.
That's where it ceases.
And
So
within-
if it's present, it's somewhere within that.
Closer than that.
Correct.
Thank you. State's Exhibit 742. Alethea Ramirez.
Correct. In this case, there were 4 gunshot wounds. There were injuries to the brain, both lungs, the aorta, left femoral vein, the pelvis, and left femur. The femur is the long bone in the thigh, and an injury to the trachea.
And those were the significant findings.
Those were the significant injuries, yes.
And each of them were gunshot wounds.
Gunshot wounds, correct.
Thank you. Exhibit 743. Bea Bravo.
Correct. In this case, the decedent had 8 gunshot wounds. The significant injuries included the brain, the major neurovascular structures of the right forearm, and the left upper arm, and fractures of the right radius and ulna. Those are the long bones within the forearm.
And any of those sufficient in and of themselves to cause death?
Certainly the brain injury, yes.
State's Exhibit 744. Ileana Torres.
Correct. In this case, there were 13 gunshot wounds. There were injuries to the heart, the left lung, the left upper arm vasculature, the liver, the facial bones, cervical spine, and the left humerus.
And was it a combination of the wounds or just a single wound that caused the death?
In this case, the heart wound itself would probably have been sufficient, but the rest were significant as well.
Thank you. State's Exhibit 745. Layla Salazar.
Correct.
I've already taken
Sorry,
it down. That's
could
okay.
I see that real quick?
Yeah.
Just confirm the number. Yes, thank you. In this case, there were 4 gunshot wounds. There were injuries to the left internal jugular vein, that is the major vein that brings blood from the head back to the heart. In addition to that, there were injuries to the left lung, the cervical and thoracic spine and cord, the tibia, which is the long bone in the shin, and there were skull fractures with intracranial bleeding, that is to say bleeding surrounding the brain, even though in this case the projectile did not traverse the cranial cavity. It went close enough to cause bleeding inside the head.
it passed enough energy in to cause bleeding, and